Greetings. Welcome. It is June 20 something 2018. Hello, and I am your intrepid host for this evening. Happy Saturday evening. It's almost Sunday morning. It's 11:49, depending on what what time zone you're in. It is Saturday, June the 23rd, 2018, and I am your intrepid host, David Null. My shaman name is Hawkeye Two Feathers, and I welcome you this morning, this evening, depending on where you are. And if you've seen any of my earlier videos, you'll know that I'm way out there somewhere, but that's okay. A lot of us are these days, and that's rather the I hate to watch the glare of my glasses in the camera. I'm trying a different light, by the way, also. I've been doing some research on these new LED light bulbs, like this. And I even put the date on here. I put this in on the December the 1st, 2017. So it's only been in about 6 months. That's not the point. But then I started finding out more about the wider blue light spectrum that these LED lights are putting out. Come to find out that it's really whacking with our brains. It's interrupting our sleep patterns. And so many of these electronics experts and folks that have been doing some study on some of this stuff are saying, you know what? You really ought to be using the old incandescent bulbs, especially before you go to bed or go to sleep. Turn off your computer a couple hours before you hit the hay. I mean, just certain things. And it's not necessarily because of the radiation or whatever that's coming. It's the light spectrum that comes off of the LED screens. So it's like, okie dokie. So, but I have been looking for incandescent bulbs, the old kind, before they started with the CFLs and this and that. And I finally found some, and I was almost tricked, because there were some that say 40. I always look for 40-watt bulbs. 60 watts is too bright for my eyes unless I have to work on, really close up on something. But so I'll get to the alien interview in just a second. I promise. I haven't forgotten. But this is something that's just like popped up right now. And when I plugged this, it's a 25-watt, just regular soft white GE bulb that we all used to buy back in the day before they made all these changes. And the light is orangish, yellowish, and it actually feels good. I've been using these LED lights, and I just recently, I went to the store, came back. I just got off the Milky Way Weekly's channel with some lovely ladies and Brian and everybody. Wonderful, wonderful, by the way. Thank you all. Just absolutely wonderful. So I plug in this 25-watt bulb with this softer, and it's got a tungsten filament on the inside, so it's not in the LED spectrum at all. And it just feels good. I'm saying this because I'm shocked that I just plugged it in. It's like already I kind of feel, whoa, ew, kind of warm and fuzzy kind of thing. Anyway, okay, all right, enough of that, right? No, but seriously, and a lot of people been having issues with sleep patterns and tired, blah, blah, blah. Well, it might be that, well, let me rephrase that. It is, or there are things in our environment that have been put into our environment, and whether they knew or not that the blue light was going to affect us or not. I mean, I'm all for LED lights, and I've been working with 12-volt LED lighting around the house and stuff, So if the power goes out, I got plenty of light, and it's all 12-volt or some type of rechargeable battery, or just AA or AAA bulbs. I got plenty of light. And I'm working on some 12-volt motors taken out of some old vehicles, like windshield wiper motor. Anyway, that's a total another subject. But to the point, though, there are things that have been put into our environment, and if they knew how it would affect us, shame on them big time. Shame, 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 you guys. Now, I love the bright light and I love it when I'm working, but if it's messing with my brain, which I am already very light sensitive, as many other people, you know, that have had brain trauma or something like that, they're very susceptible to this. So this is really important. I'll probably do another video about that. But now I'm doing this just as an introduction and say hi, howdy, and all that. Now, this wonderful little Chromebook is a little skippy. So I'm going to try to share screen now. I got to put my glasses back on for that, though. Uh-oh, the alien stole them. I know that my alien brothers that I've been in contact with, I know they understand the joke. So, you know. So let me pick the right window here and tell this thing to share. All right, now it says I'm sharing. I can't see anything else here. How do I check to see if this... All right. It says there are 3 viewers. Can you see the alien interview thingy? Will somebody put a 1 or a yes or something so I know that this thing's going out before I go any further? Pretty please. The chat's supposed to be on. Okay. Let me do that. Maybe that works better. All right, it says I'm screen sharing to everybody now. All right, I'm going to assume that that's working. Okay, because I have to, wait a minute, let me see if I can do a little bit of screen manipulation here. Oop, wrong way. All right. I used to be very, 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 very skillful at doing computers and things as an engineer and a 3D CAD operator and designer. And because of my head traumas and certain things, I'm having to relearn a lot of stuff. So I thank you for being patient with me here. Now, I'm going to hope that this is working. Now on my screen, and it says I'm sharing this with everybody, it says Alien Interview. It's based on personal notes and interview transcriptions provided by Matilda O'Donnell MacElroy. Editing and supplemental footnotes by Lawrence R. Spencer. And he was the author of the Oz Factors. Now, I'm not going to go through this entire book here. There's particular things that I wish to hit on. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. And what that means is that I first saw this on the Goldfish Report with Louisa and the Country Roads with Winston Shrout. I think I said his name correctly. Winston, if you ever watch this, I hope I said that right. I'm an old Georgia boy, so I know about that that ham bone. That's an inside joke, sort of. But anyway, so he brought this up months ago, and I've been told that I needed to bring this out. Now, basically what happened was this Miss McElroy, she was a nurse at the Army base or wherever when they brought this alien in. And she sent this information to Mr. Lawrence Spencer for him to publish or do with what he thought was best. Okay? So I'm going to skip through this and get down into the more meat of it. Now, it's really good to read, but I don't want to make I always make a video that's 2 or 3 hours long anyway, but I'm going to try to be to the point. I'm trying to be more concise and etc., not ramble as much. as I ramble on. Now, as the preamble, I think this is a really cool thing. What greater brutality can be inflicted on anyone than to erase or deny the spiritual awareness, identity, ability, and memory that is the essence of oneself? I think that's great. I really do. What greater brutality can be inflicted? Now, the reason I stop here for this right now is I've done several videos on, what the liars have done about the Bible and how many changes have been made, and that, we, the people, haven't been told that, things have been altered or changed, and that those alterations affect the meaning of these things, right? And I've always keep telling people the Bible said to adore God, not to worship him. They changed the word from adore to worship, and that's not supposed to be. So what these folks have done through religion, they have been very brutal because they have inflicted upon us a falsehood. And we all think, I grew up Catholic and etc. And so to find out now that they've altered the Bible so many times over the years, it's not the Bible. You have to go back to the old script. And people are carrying around new Bibles and they have no idea it's been changed. So they're walking around in a stupor thinking they're praying to their God, when actually these folks are trying to deny the spiritual awareness, our identities, meaning our spiritual identities, our spiritual abilities, and our long-term spiritual memories. And all of this is the essence of ourselves. And these folks have been stealing it for a while. Now, onward we go. Now, I try to do this slow, but the computer likes to, jump ahead. So there's wonderful dedications and so forth, editorial guidelines and so forth, definitions, and if we need something, we'll come back. Now, this gentleman who wrote took this information, Mr. Lawrence R. Spencer, these two paragraphs, in my opinion, kind of sum it up. Personally, I'm not assuming that anything I receive from Mrs. McElroy is in any way authentic, with the exception of the envelope and the paper inside the envelope. I cannot substantiate any of it. Indeed, I can't truly verify that there was ever such a person as Mrs. McElroy, other than a voice I heard over the phone in 1998. The voice could have been anyone. Personally, I do not have a vested interest in UFO research. Yes, I've written a few books about immortal spiritual beings because I'm interested in the subject, but I haven't sold enough of those books to pay for the time it took to write them. It is a hobby. I earn my living as a small business consultant. He goes on to say, it is not my intention to justify, explain, or remedy any disability to perceive or understand the mysteries of extraterrestrials, UFOs, government's agendas, or spiritual abilities. Nor is it intended to educate, persuade, or to promote to anyone that any of these phenomena exist. Furthermore, what I may or may not think about any of this is irrelevant. Moreover, I have burned all of the original documents, including the envelope I received, etc. So he wants to make everybody sure that you understand he did this for her. Okay, and there's a long, lengthy discussion about that. But now that's Mr. Lawrence Spencer's point of view. Now, this is about the source of the material, and he explains how he got the notes and so forth. Many of the pages were typewritten. Some of it had been scribbled. A lot of what he says written on the same typewriter. The paper is old, and a lot of the papers and stuff that was typed out, the paper, all the paper matched. You could tell by the, anyway, it goes on. Okay. So he's explaining this. According to the alien being Airl, if anything he, she, it supposedly communicated can be trusted, and if the translation or interpretation of this alleged communication is accurate, the history of this universe is a river of lies down which the might and freedom of all powerful, godlike, immortal spiritual beings ended and was lost in a sea of matter and morality. That's a heavy statement right there, I tell you. Furthermore, according to the very direct and undiplomatic statements made, which seem to express the personal opinion of the alien, if one were traveling the far reaches of the universe in search of a place called hell, it would be an accurate description of Earth and the inhabitants in its current condition. If one were traveling the far reaches of the universe in search of a place called hell, it would be an accurate description of Earth and the inhabitants in its current condition. OMG. Okay, to further complicate and magnify the incredible source of the interview transcriptions I received from Mrs. McElroy is the fact that they are, number one, based almost entirely on telepathic communication between the alien and Mrs. McElroy. Number two, many of these interviews discuss paranormal activities of immortal spiritual beings. Of course, most scientific authorities are unwilling to acknowledge or perceive spiritual phenomena of any kind. The dictionary definition of the word paranormal is, as an adjective, cannot be explained by scientific methods. Number two, supernatural or seemingly outside normal sensory channels. By definition, people who use the word paranormal are, number one, not able to explain spiritual phenomena, and number two, spiritual phenomena outside their normal sensory channels. Now, many of us who are getting together these days are starting to have these spiritual phenomena outside of our normal sensory channels, by the way. So I will continue with this a little bit, but in short, scientists suffer, and in short, scientists suffer from the inability and or willingness to perceive and or explain spiritual activities. Therefore, the discussion of spiritual activities or spiritual universes in this book are expected to be understood only by those who can and will perceive such things. And that's why I think some of this information is important. Now, I'm going to skip down through here. It's about the interview and this, that, and the other thing, because I would rather get to the meat of this. Now, this lady, she seemed genuine. I mean, this is basically it. You know, she gave this information, sent this information to this gentleman, and he agreed to publish it. Something must have resonated in Mr. Lawrence for him to go ahead and publish this. So here's a letter. I'm typing this letter to you on my old Underwood typewriter that I bought after I was discharged from the Army. Somehow it seemed like a fitting contrast to the subject of this letter and the documents you will find enclosed. The last time I spoke to you was about 8 years ago. During your brief telephone interview with me, you asked me to assist you with the research for the Oz Factors book, which you were writing because you suspected I might know something that would help your investigation into the possibility that extraterrestrial beings may have influenced the history of Earth. When we spoke, I told you that I did not have any information that I could share with you about anything. Since then, I have read your book and found it very interesting and compelling. You are obviously a man who has done his homework and who could understand my own experiences. I've been thinking a lot about your allusion to the old philosopher whom you paraphrased in our phone conversation, with great power comes great responsibility. Although I don't think power is pertinent in my life or to my reasons for sending you the enclosed documents, you certainly did get me thinking about my responsibility. Now I stop here in the letter because that's how many of us are feeling right now. We are thinking about our responsibilities to the rest of humankind, to other people who are having these experiences. And as was discussed earlier and on Nookie Way Weekly's thing about how we are all standing up and starting to speak and how the family is growing and it's a wonderful family. Now, let me go down here. How long is this letter? I don't want to keep boring with this. I have reconsidered my position for the variety of reasons, not the least of which is my realization that you were right. I do have a responsibility to myself at least. I cannot possibly tell you the personal hell of, of ethical irresolution and spiritual ambivalence I have endured since 1947. I do not want to keep playing the game of maybe I should have or maybe I shouldn't have through the rest of eternity. Many men have been killed to extinguish the possibility of revealing the knowledge I have helped to withhold from society until now. Only a small handful of people on earth have seen and heard what I have had the burden of keeping secret for 60 years. All those years, I thought that I had been entrusted with a great deal of confidence by the powers that be in our government, although I have often felt that power is greatly misguided to protect mankind from the certain knowledge that not only do intelligent extraterrestrial life forms exist, but that they have and continue to aggressively monitor and invade the lives of everyone on Earth today. Let me read that last part again. Not only do intelligent extraterrestrial life forms exist, but that they have and continue to aggressively monitor and invade the lives of everyone on Earth every day. That's heavy. Therefore, I think the time has come to pass along my secret knowledge to someone I think will understand it. I don't think it would be responsible of me to take the knowledge I have into the silent afterlife, beyond reach or recognition. I think there is a greater good to be served than protecting the vested interest for whom this information is considered a matter of national security, whatever that means, and is therefore justification for making it top secret. Also, I am now 83 years old. I have decided to leave this body, which has outlasted its usefulness to me, using a painless method of self-administered euthanasia. I have only a few months to live and nothing to fear or lose. Okay. She moved to near the hills of Tara. Then she says, St. Patrick came to Tara to conquer the ancient religion of the pagans. He may have suppressed the religious practices in the area, but he certainly did not have any impact on the gods who brought these civilizations to earth, as you will discover when you read the document enclosed. Therefore, this is a fitting location for my departure from this unholy world and final release from the burdens of this life. The crystal clear perspective of hindsight has revealed a higher purpose to me, assisting the survival of the planet, all living beings and life forms in our galaxy. Now, that's how I feel, and many other people are feeling the same. I guess I'll continue. The status quo of our government establishment has been to protect the people from knowledge of such matters. In fact, the only protection afforded by ignorance and secrecy is to hide the private agenda of those in power to enslave others, and by doing so, to disarm every perceived enemy and ally through superstition and stupidity. How many of us feel stupid lately because we've been led by our nose? Okay, sorry about that. Now, discusses about how she transcribed it and sending the documents and national security, blah, blah, blah. In so doing, you can disavow any knowledge, and which he does. She gives warning of trying to make too big a deal out of it. This information, which has been suspected and or speculated upon by so many for so long, has been constantly denied by mainstream media, academia, and the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address. As you know, in July 1947, the Roswell Airfield issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Bomb Group had recovered a crashed flying disc from the ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, sparking intense media interest. Later that same day, the commanding general of the 8th Air Force stated that Major Jesse Marcel, who was involved with the original recovery of the debris, had recovered only the tattered remnants of a weather balloon. We've heard that before. The true facts of the incident have been suppressed by the United States government since then. Now, remember, we're reading something. This letter was written in 2007. So that's 11 years ago. All right. And as I read this, it's like it could have been written yesterday. You may not know that I was enlisted in the U.S. Women's Army Air Force, the WAC, Medical Corps, which was a part of the U.S. Army back then. I was assigned to the 509 bomb group as a flight nurse at the time of the incident. So that's where she sets this up. When the news that there had been a crash was received at the base, I was asked to accompany Mr. Cavett, the counterintelligence officer, to the crash site as the driver of his vehicle and to render any needed emergency medical assistance to any survivors if necessary. Therefore, I briefly witnessed the wreckage of an alien spacecraft as well as the remains of the several alien personnel aboard the craft who were already dead. When we arrived, I learned that one of the personnel on board the craft had survived the crash and was conscious and apparently uninjured. The conscious alien was similar in appearance, but not the same as the other two. None of the other personnel present could communicate with the survivor, as the being did not communicate verbally or by any recognizable signs. However, while I examined the patient for injuries, I immediately detected and understood that the alien being was attempting to communicate with me by mental images or telepathic thought, which projected directly from the mind of the being. I immediately reported this phenomena to Mr. Cavett, as no other person present could perceive these thoughts, and the alien seemed able and willing to communicate with me. It was decided after a brief consultation with a senior officer that I would accompany the surviving alien back to the base. This was partially due to the fact that I was a nurse and could attend to the physical needs of the alien, as well as serve as a non-threatening communicator and companion. After all, I was the only woman at the site and the only one who was not armed. I was therefore assigned permanently to serve as companion of the alien at all times. So I'm reading this because this part is really important. She is describing that she was there. I'm going to take a quick pause right here and says there's 6 viewers. I don't know if anybody's coming in the chat or not. I can't see it, but there's 6 of you, and I see the little numbers going by. So I'm gonna continue. My duty was to communicate with the interview with the alien and to make a complete report of all that I discovered to the command authorities. Subsequently, I was supplied with specific list of questions provided to me by the military and non-military personnel, which I was to interpret for the alien and record the responses to the questions provided. I also accompanied the alien at all times during medical testing and the many other examinations to which the alien was subjected by staff from numerous government agencies. I was given a promotion in rank to Senior Master Sergeant to improve my security rating and to increase my pay grade from $54 a month to $138 a month. How about that mess? For this very unusual assignment, I performed these duties from July the 7th through August of 1947, at which time the alien died or departed the body, as you will read about in my notes. Although I was never left entirely alone with the alien, as there were always military personnel, intelligence agency people, and a variety of other officials present from time to time, I did have uninterrupted access and communication with the alien being for nearly 6 weeks. Wow. Hereinafter is an overview and summary of my personal recollections of conversations with the alien craft pilot, of whom I came to know by the identity of Airl. I feel that it is my duty at this time, in the best interest of the citizens of Earth. I'm going to read this again, because I'm feeling the same thing. That's why I'm doing this video. I feel that it is my duty at this time, in the best interest of the citizens of Earth, to reveal what I have learned from my interaction with Airl during those 6 weeks on the anniversary of her death or departure 60 years ago. Although I served as a nurse in the Army Air Force, I am not a pilot nor technician. Further, I did not have any direct contact with the spacecraft or other materials thereafter. To that degree, it must be taken into consideration that my understanding of the communication I had with Airl are based on my own subjective ability to interpret the meaning of the thoughts and mental images I was able to perceive. How concise is this? Oh, man. Our communication did not consist of spoken language in the conventional sense. Indeed, the body of the alien had no mouth through which to speak or communicate. Our communication was by telepathy. At first, I could not understand Airl very clearly. I could perceive images, emotions, and impressions, but it was difficult for me to express these verbally. Once Airl learned the English language, she was able to focus her thoughts more precisely using symbols and meanings of words I could understand. Learning the English language was done as a favor to me. It was more for my own benefit than hers. By the end of our interview sessions, and increasingly since then, I have become more comfortable with telepathic communication. I have become more adept at understanding Airl's thoughts as though they are my own. Somehow her thoughts became my thoughts. Her emotions are my emotions. However, this is limited by her willingness and intention to share her own personal universe with me. She is able to be selective about what communication I am allowed to receive from her, and likewise her experience, training, education, relationships, and purposes are uniquely her own. Now, if you will, I don't know if I can zoom up on this. Let me see if I can make this get bigger. Okay. Ooh, that's easier to read too. Now, look at that symbol right there. The symbol of the domain. I mean, how many places have you seen? I mean, that's like the Star Trek symbol almost, you know? And this is the symbol of the domain. Now, this gets kind of heavy, in my opinion. The domain is a race or civilization of which Airl, the alien I interviewed, is an officer, pilot, and engineer serving in the Domain Expeditionary Force. The symbol represents the origin and unlimited boundary of the known universe, united and integrated into a vast civilization under the control of the Domain. Airl is currently stationed at a base in the asteroid belt, which she refers to as a space station in the solar system of Earth. First and foremost, Airl is herself. Secondarily, she voluntarily serves as an officer, pilot, and engineer in the Domain Expeditionary Force. In that capacity, she has duties and responsibilities, but she is at leave to come and go as she pleases. So it's not like she was drafted and she's going to get executed if she wants to go on leave. But anyway, and this also goes back to things that were discussed back in the 90s, at least the late 90s, when Bob Lazar and other folks was out on VHS and things, that there were huge spaceships that were actually in the asteroid belt, kind of sort of hiding, but that actually, you know, the asteroid belt is filled with, beings and bases and all kinds of things. So interesting that as I read this again, many, many months since I wrote it, read it before, is that, okay, maybe I remember it on a subconscious quantum level, but I firmly remember understanding the asteroid belt and very large moons and Death Star planet. I don't mean as in Death Star, but there probably are Death Stars out there. Okay, so let me continue with that. Please accept the material and make it known to as many people as possible. I repeat that it is not my intention to endanger your life with the possession of this material, nor do I really expect you to believe any of it either. However, I do sense that you can appreciate the value that such knowledge may have to those who are willing and able to face the reality of it. That's intense to me. Mankind needs to know the answers to questions which are contained in these documents. Who are we? Where did we come from? What is our purpose on earth? Is mankind alone in the universe? If there is intelligent life elsewhere, why have they not contacted us? Well, because we're a bunch of murdering thieves, that's why. I'm sorry. It is vital that people understand the devastating consequences to our spiritual and physical survival if we fail to take effective action to undo the long-standing and pervasive effects of alien intervention on Earth. Perhaps the information in these documents will serve as a stepping stone to a better future for mankind. Oh, wow. Thank you. I hope that you can be more clever, creative, and courageous in the distribution of this information than I have been. May the gods bless you and keep you. This is Matilda O'Donnell MacElroy, Senior Master Sergeant, Women's Army Air Force Medical Corps, retired, 100 Troyton Heights, Navan, Meath, County Meath in Ireland. Now, she's since passed away. So, just her letter. I mean, I've read a lot about what Ariel said, and I've had to go back through this several times. And because I'm like, every time I read through this, I find something else that is just like, oh my gosh. And so it still floors me. I mean, and I've read this document, and I might go to the end and read some things or skip to the middle. And it's like I read the beginning of this once. And this is only my second time reading through some of this because I would always jump down the pages to the interviews with Airl. I wanted to hear about that. But in going back with this, though, and seeing that um, Miss Matilda's passion and how she felt about this, and after 60 years of holding it in, etc., and that her passion really comes back to me as I read her letter to Mr. Lewis. So some of this is important, and I'm going to try to skip down, but I feel it's important. So this is chapter 1 and her first interview. By the time the alien had been returned to the base, I'd already spent several hours with her. As I mentioned, Mr. Cabot told me to stay with the alien since I was the only person among us who could understand her communication. I could not understand my ability to communicate with the being. I had never before that time experienced telepathic communication with anyone. The nonverbal communication I experienced was like the understanding you might have when a child or a dog is trying to get you to understand something, but much more direct and powerful. Even though there are no words spoken or signs made, the intentions of the thoughts were unmistakable to me. I realized later, although I received the thought, I did not necessarily interpret its meaning exactly. I think that the alien being was not willing to discuss technical matters due to the nature of her position as an officer and a pilot with the duty to maintain the security and confidentiality required by her own unit or organization. Any soldier who is captured by the enemy in the line of duty has a responsibility to withhold vital information, even in the face of interrogation or torture, of course. But in spite of all that, I've always felt that the alien being was not really trying to hide anything from me. I just never got that feeling. Her communication always seemed honest and sincere to me. But I suppose you can never know for sure. I definitely feel that I shared a unique bond with the alien. It was a kind of trust or empathy that you have with a patient or child. I think this is because the alien could understand that I was really interested in her and had no harmful intention, nor would I allow any harm to come to her if I could prevent it. This was true too. I've referred to the alien as her. Actually, the being was not sexual in any way, either psychologically or physiologically. She did have a rather strong feminine presence and demeanor. However, in terms of psychology, the being was asexual and had no internal or external reproductive organs. Her body was more like the body of a doll or a robot. There were no internal organs, as the body was not constructed of biological cell. It did have a kind of circuit system or electrical nervous system that ran throughout the body, but I could not understand how it worked. In stature and appearance, the body was quite short and petite, about 40 inches tall. The head was disproportionately large relative to arms, legs, and torso, which were thin. There were 3 fingers on each of the 2 hands and feet, which were somehow prehensile. The head had no operational nose or mouth or ears. I understood that a space officer does not need these, as space has no atmosphere to conduct sound. Therefore, that's an interesting statement. I understand that a space officer does not need these, as space has no atmosphere to conduct sound. Interesting. Therefore, sound-related sensory organs are not built into the body, nor does the body need to consume food, hence the absence of a mouth, which means there ain't another end either. The eyes were quite large. I was never able to determine the exact degree of visual acuity of which the eyes were capable, but I observed that her sense of light must have been extremely acute. I think the lenses of the eyes were very dark and opaque, may also have been able to detect waves or particles beyond the visual spectrum of light. I suspect that this may have included the full range of electromagnetic spectrum, or more. I do not know this for sure. When the being looked at me, her gaze seemed to penetrate right through me as though she had an X-ray vision. I found this a little embarrassing at first, but until I realized that she had no sexual intentions. In fact, I don't think she even had the thought that I was male or female. It became very obvious after a short time that with the being that her body did not require oxygen, food, or water or any other external source of nutrition or energy. As I learned later, this being supplied her own energy, which animated and operated the body. That's just fascinating. It seemed a little bit eerie at first, but I got used to the idea. It's really a very, very simple body. There is not much to it compared to our own bodies. Airl explained to me that it was not mechanical like a robot, nor was it biological. It is animated directly by her as a spiritual being. Technically, from a medical standpoint, I would say that Errol's body could not even be called alive. Her doll body was not a biological form with cells and so forth. Think Avatar. Is this where they got the idea of the movie Avatar? Because that's what Airl was. It had a smooth skin or covering, which was gray in color. The body was highly tolerant to changes in temperature, atmospheric conditions, and pressure. The limbs were quite frail without musculature. In space, there is no gravity, so very little muscle strength is needed. The body was used almost entirely on spacecraft or in low or no gravity environments. Since Earth is a heavy gravity, the body was not able to walk around very well, as the legs were not really suited to that purpose. The feet and hands were quite flexible and agile, however. Overnight before my first interview with the alien, the area had been transformed to a buzzing hive of activity. There were dozens of men setting up lights and so forth. So they went into this thing about they're experts in foreign language, code breaking. And so this is the first one. Officials transcript, alien interview, 7/9 of 1947. Question: are you injured? Answer: no. Question: what medical assistance do you require? Answer: none. Question: do you need food or water or other substance? Answer: no. Question: do you have any special environmental needs, such as air temperature, atmospheric chemical, air pressure, or waste elimination? Answer: no, I am not a biological being. That's in capitals. Oh, actually, they all are. Never mind. Question: does your body or spacecraft carry any germs or contamination that may be harmful to humans or other Earth life forms? Answer: no germs in space. Interesting. Question: does your government know you are here? Answer: not at this time. Question: are others of your kind going to come looking for you? Answer: yes. Oh, that must have went over good. Question: what is the weapons capability of your people? Answer: very destructive. Woo. I did not understand the exact nature of the kind of arms or weapons that they might have, but I did not feel that there was any malevolent intention in her reply. Just a statement of fact. Oh yeah, we can blow up your planet. Don't worry about it. We ain't worried. Okay. Question: why did your spacecraft crash? Answer: it was struck by an electrical discharge from the atmosphere, which caused us to lose control. Question: why was your spacecraft in this area? Answer: investigation of burning clouds, radiation explosions. In other words, the atomic bomb. Question: how does your spacecraft fly? Answer: it is controlled through mind, responds to thought commands. Mind or thought command are the only English language words I can think of to describe the thought. Their bodies, and I think the spacecraft, are connected directly to them through some kind of electrical nervous system that they control with their own thoughts. Question: how do your people communicate with each other? Answer: through mind, thought. The words mind and thought combined together are the closest English language words I can think of to describe the idea at this time. However, it was very obvious to me that they communicate directly from the mind, just as she is communicating with me. Question: do you have a written language or symbols for communication? Yes. Question: what planet are you from? Answer: the home, birthplace, world of the domain. Miss Matilda says, since I am not an astronomer, I have no way of thinking in terms of stars, galaxies, constellations, and directions in space. The impression I received was of a planet in the center of a huge cluster of galaxies that is to her like home. And I just got this flash that it's Pleiades, but never mind. Wow, that was just weird. Yeah. Okay. Or birthplace. The word domain is the closest word I can think of to describe her concept, images, and thoughts about where she is from. It could as easily be called the territory or the realm. However, I am sure that it was not just a planet or a solar system or a cluster of stars, but an enormous number of galaxies. Question: will your government send representatives to meet with our leaders? Answer: no. Question: what are your intentions concerning Earth? Answer: I love this. Preserve, protect property of the domain. Question: what have you learned about Earth governments and military installations? Answer: poor, small, destroy planet. Ooh, chilling. Question: why haven't your people made your existence known to the people of Earth? Answer: watch, observe, no contact. Matilda says, I got the impression that contact with people on Earth was not permitted, but I could not think of a word or idea that communicated the impression I got exactly. They are just observing us. Question: have your people visited Earth previously? Answer: periodic, repeating observations. Question: how long have you known about Earth? Answer: long before humans. Matilda says, I am not sure if the word prehistoric would be more accurate, but it was definitely a very long period of time before human beings evolved. Question: what do you know about the history of civilization on Earth? Answer: small interest, attention, small time. Matilda says, the answer to this question seemed very vague to me. However, I perceived that her interest in Earth history is not very strong, or that she did not pay much attention to it. Or maybe, I don't know. I didn't really get an answer to that question. Question: can you describe your home world to us? Answer: place of civilization, culture, history, large planet, wealth, resources always, order, power, knowledge, wisdom, 2 stars, 3 moons. Oh, that'd be cool. Question: what is the state of development of your civilization? Answer: ancient, trillions of years, always, above all others, plan, schedule, progress, win, high goals, ideas. Nothing in there says, to conquer. And of course, they probably wouldn't say that anyway. So Miss Matilda wants to explain more. I use the number trillions because I am sure that the meaning was a number larger than many billions. The idea of the length of time she communicated is beyond me. It's really closer to the idea of infinity in terms of Earth years. Question: do you believe in God? Answer: we think it is. Make it continue always. Matilda says, I'm sure that the alien being does not understand the concept of God or worship as we do. I assume that the people in her civilization were all atheists. My impression was that they think very highly of themselves and are very prideful indeed. Question: what type of society do you have? Answer: order, power, future always, control, grow. Matilda says these are the closest words I could use to describe the idea that she had about her own society or civilization. Her emotion when communicating her response to this question became very intense, very bright, and very emphatic. Her thought was filled with an emotion that gave me a feeling of jubilation or joy, but it made me very nervous also. Question: are there other intelligent life forms beside yourself in the universe? Answer: everywhere. We are greatest, highest of all. Matilda says, due to her small stature, I am sure that she did not mean tallest or biggest. Again, her prideful nature showed through in the feeling I received from her. This was the conclusion of the first interview. When the answers to the list of questions were typed and given, they were all very excited that I was able to get the alien to say anything. However, after they finished reading my answers, they were disappointed that I could not understand more clearly. Now, they had a lot of new questions because of the answers I received to the first list of questions. Now, I'm going to skip down because basically they argued and who should do what and this, that, and the other thing. And finally, it was decided that I should be left with the alien by myself to see if I could get answers. Okay, that's basically what all that gets to. Chapter 2 in the second interview. Question: why have you stopped communicating? Answer: no stop. Others: hidden, covered, secret fear. The alien could not communicate with them because they were afraid of her or did not trust her. And it is clear to me that the alien is very aware that some people have secret intentions toward her and are hiding their real thoughts. It is equally obvious to me that the alien does not have even a tiny bit of fear of us or anything else for that matter. She pondered her words and what personally I've never suffered any fear or misapprehension about the alien whatsoever. I was very, very curious and excited to learn anything and everything I could about her and from her. However, like the alien, I did not have much trust or confidence in the agents or authorities who were in controlling my interviews. So she goes on to say, about this, that, and the other thing, receiver, telepathic, and so forth. And so she waited for more instructions. This was the third interview, and all subsequent interviews that I had with the alien were absorbed and observed and recorded, as I mentioned above, by dozens of other people. Although they were not physically present, a special room had been constructed with a window of one-way glass through which the interview could be observed from an adjoining room without intruding on the alien. The alien had been moved into the newly constructed room and was seated in an ordinarily overstuffed living room chair covered with a flowery fabric. I'm sure that someone had been sent into town to buy a chair from the nearest available furniture store. The alien's body was about the same size as a very thin 5-year-old child, so she was dwarfed by the chair. She didn't need any food and so forth. I want to get down to more of the message. Now, this other stuff is interesting, but anyway. So, question. Can you, okay, this is, the first one was on the 9th. This is the 11th of July of 47. Can you read or write any Earth languages? Answer: no. Question: do you understand numbers or mathematics? Answer: yes. I am an officer, pilot, engineer. Question: can you write or draw symbols or pictures that we may be able to translate into our own language? Answer, uncertain. Question, are there any other signs or means of communication you can use to help us understand your thoughts more clearly? Answer, no. So Miss Matilda's personal note is very sure that this was not true, but I understood clearly that Airl was not willing to communicate in writing or drawing or sign language. My feeling was that she was following orders like any soldier who has ever been captured, not to reveal any information that might be useful to the enemy, even under torture. She was only able and willing to reveal non-confidential or personal information or rank, name, and serial number. Question, can you show us on a map of the stars which is the star of your home planet? No. Now, Matilda says this is not because she does not know the directions from Earth to her own home planet. She is unwilling to reveal the location. It was also due to the fact that the star system of her home planet does not exist on any star map on Earth. It is too far away. Question, how long will it take your people to locate you here? Answer, unknown. Question, how long would it take your people to travel here to rescue you? Answer, minutes or hours. Question, how can we make them understand that we do not intend to harm you? Answer, intentions are clear. See in your mind, images, feelings. Question, if you are not a biological entity, why do you refer to yourself as feminine? Answer, I am a creator, mother, source. I repeat, Airl says, I am a creator, mother, source. Holy mackerel. So she goes on to say about cooperating or revealing information. She was also sure that the alien was very certain of certain actual intentions of the people who wrote those questions, as she could read their minds. So Airl knew what was going on. And so what was going on is they decided that they were going to teach Airl how to read by using old methods that they used back in the 1800s to teach children to read. And they used it for 100 years or more. Yeah, a great deal of controversy. So again on 7/11, question, what assurance or proof do you require from us that will make you feel safe enough to answer our question? Answer, only she speaks, only she hears, only she questions. No others must learn, know, understand. So when she returned from that, you can bet how them boys, she was the only, Miss Matilda was the only female on the base. So you know how that goes. All them old boys around, right? You know, and there are more arguments. And they decided to, hang on, let me, went just a little bit. The theory, let's see, one more. The language specialist suggested that I take several children's books and a basic reading primer and grammar text with me into the interview room. The plan was that I would sit next to the alien and read aloud to her from the books while pointing to the text I was reading with my finger so that she could follow along. The theory was that the alien could eventually be taught to read, just as a child is taught to read by word and sound association with the written word, as well as instruction in fundamental grammar. They also assumed, I think, that if the alien was intelligent enough to communicate with me telepathically and fly a spacecraft across the galaxy, that she could probably learn to speak a language as quickly as a 5-year-old or faster. I returned to the interview room and proposed the idea to Airl. She did not object to learning the language, although she did not make any commitment to answer questions either. No one else had any better idea, so we went on ahead with the idea. I began the reading lessons with the first pages of a school book that had been used to teach pioneer children in the 1800s on the frontiers of America. It is called McGuffey's Eclectic Reader, Primer through 6th. Since I'm a nurse and not a teacher, the language expert who gave me the books also gave me an extensive briefing, a course that took an entire day on how to use the books to teach the alien. He said the reason he chose these particular books was because of the original 1836 version of those books were used for 3/4 of a century to teach about 4/5 of all American school children how to read. No other books had ever had so much influence over American children for so long. And this is just Dave's side note. I think we ought to go back to that gum book, because kids these days don't know no kind of grammar, I tell you. Back to this. McGuffey's educational course begins in the primer by presenting the letters of the alphabet to be memorized in sequence. The children were taught step by step, etc. We know about all that kind of stuff. I discovered that the stories in the first and second readers picture children in the relationships and animals. The third, fourth, fifth, and sixth expanded on those ideas. One of the story I remember was The Widow and the Merchant. And it was a morality tale about a merchant who befriends a widow in need. Later, when the widow proves to be honest, the merchant gives her a special gift. The books do not necessarily teach you to believe that charity is expected only of the wealthy people, though. We all know that generosity is a virtue that should be practiced by anyone. Let me read that sentence again. We all know that generosity is a virtue and should be practiced by everyone. So all the stories were all blah, blah, blah. We've all seen, as American folks anyway, we've seen those readers as we were going. As instructed, I sat next to Airl in the interview room, reading aloud to her from the successive books. Nonetheless, Ariel seemed to absorb every letter, sound, syllable, and meaning as we progressed. We continued this process 14 hours a day for 3 consecutive days without exception, without interruption, except for a few meals and rest breaks on my part. Airl did not take any breaks for anything. She did not sleep. Instead, she remained sitting in the overstuffed chair in the interview room, reviewing the lessons we already covered. When I returned each morning to begin where we'd left off, she'd already memorized the previous lessons and was well into the next pages. This pattern continued to accelerate until it became pointless for me to continue reading to her. Although Airl did not have a mouth to speak with, she was now able to think at me in English. At the end of these lessons, Airl was able to read and study by herself. I showed her how to use a dictionary to look up new words. Airl was consulted the dictionary continually after that. From then on, my job was acting as a courier for her, requesting that reference books be brought to her in a steady stream. So next, they brought in a set of encyclopedias, and that went over well. Over the next 6 days, books were brought in from libraries all over the country. Now, this is 1947, and this is Roswell, so I'm sure they didn't have a library that was going to be necessary for this, so they were bringing in stuff from everywhere. I presume because it wasn't more than a few days before, she had read through several hundred of them. She studied every subject I could imagine and many other very technical things I never wanted to know anything about, like astronomy, metallurgy, engineering, mathematics, various technical manuals, and so forth. Later, she began to read fiction books and poetry. I think she must have read at least 50 books about human history and archaeology. Of course, I made sure that she received a copy of the Holy Bible also, which she read from cover to cover without comment or question. Interesting. Although I continued to stay with Airl for 12 to 14 hours a day, most of that time during the following week had been spent without much communication between us, except for an occasional question she asked me. The questions were usually meant to give her a sense of context or clarify something in the book she was reading. Oddly, Airl told me that her favorite books are Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, OMG, Don Quixote de la Mancha, 1001 Nights. She said the authors of those stories showed that it is more important to have great spirit and imagination than great skill or power. I could not answer a lot of her questions, so I consulted the people in the outer room for answers. Most of those had to do with technical and scientific things. A few of her questions were about the humanities. A depth of complex understanding and subtlety of her questions showed that she had a very penetrating intellect. Personally, I think she had already known a lot more about the culture and history of Earth than she was willing to admit when we started. I would soon discover how much more. Now we're fixing to get into it. By the 15th day after rescuing Airl, I was able to communicate fluidly and effortlessly with her in English. She had absorbed so much written material by this time that her academic education far exceeded my own. Although I graduated from high school in Los Angeles and college 4 years of pre-med nursing, the variety of my own reading had been fairly limited. I had not studied most of these subjects. She was especially fond of sections of her favorite stories from classic literature, like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain. How about that? Tales of Gulliver's Travel, and Peter Pan, and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Isn't that interesting? By this time, Airl had become the teacher, and I was now the student. I was about to learn what men of Earth did not know or have no way of knowing. On the afternoon of the 16th, Airl and I sat next to each other as she read. She closed the last page of a book she was reading and placed it aside. I was about to hand her the next book from a large pile waiting to be read when she turned and said, or thought to me, "I'm ready to speak now." At first, I was a little confused by the remark. I gestured for her to continue, and she began to teach me my first lesson. All right, folks. I've been at this for an hour. I need to just take a little sip of something here and take a little, deep breath. And if you can see that page, it's fairly large for me. I don't know about you. I got to check the live feed. I'm not even sure I'm still going. It says I am. So, but that, how assumptions are, it makes an ass of you and me when you assume. Anyway, I just noticed something. I need to plug this thing up before the battery runs out. Okay, hang on, folks. You talk amongst yourselves there for a moment. Let me plug that in. Oh, the light come on. Okay. Let me go down here and check, do the bottom of the Google Hangouts thing, etc. All right. It says I'm still live, down to three views. Okay. This second portion is where we really get in to what Airl is discussing. But I find that in her conversations of what she was reading and understanding, she liked The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and Huckleberry Finn. So an alien from another galaxy, they like our stories. I just find that fascinating as a storyteller and puppeteer. So now, let me take another couple of big gulps here real quick. Now, I really do think this information is very pertinent to what we're going through right now on Earth, the galaxy, etc. So this is the 24th of July in 47. What would you like to say, Airl? I asked. Airl's response: I have been part of the Domain expeditionary force in this sector of space for several thousand years. However, I have not personally had intimate contact with beings on Earth since 5965 BCE. It is not my primary function to interact with inhabitants of the planets within the domain. I'm an officer, pilot, and engineer with many duties to perform. Nonetheless, although I am fluent in 347 other languages within the domain, I have not been exposed to your English language. The last Earth language which I was conversant in was the Sanskrit language of the Vedic hymns. At that time, I was a member of a mission sent to investigate the loss of a domain base located in the Himalayan mountains. An entire battalion of officers, pilots, communication, and administrative personnel disappeared and the base destroyed. Several million years ago, I was trained and served as an investigation, data evaluation, and program development officer for the domain. Because I was experienced in that technology, I was sent to Earth as part of the search team. One of my duties involved interrogation of the human population that inhabited the adjoining area at that time. Many of the people in that region reported sighting Vimanas, or a spacecraft, in the area. Following the logical extension of evidence, testimony, observation, as well as the absence of certain evidence, I led my team to the discovery that there were still old Empire ships and well-hidden old Empire installations in this solar system of which we had not been completely aware. Now, this is Dave's note. We've been receiving information the last several years, David Wilcox, Corey Good, all them folks about how, this planet and this area here, ruled by the Draco and the lizard. Well, let's not say lizard folk, because that's wrong. Some of the reptiles. And so that is the old empire. Okay. So we have been told many things. Now, in this particular thing, it was written in 2007. I don't remember much coming out about the Draco and such back then. It was just starting to come out really well. Okay. So if what she wrote at the date that she wrote it, it's very appropriate for what's going on now, is my point. You and I are unable to communicate in your language because I personally have not been exposed to your language. Let's see. She was trained in all kinds of other stuff. Now I am prepared to give you certain information that I feel will be of great value to you. I will tell you the truth. Although truth is relative to all other truth, I wish to share with you as honestly and accurately as possible. Truth as I see it within the boundaries of my integrity to myself, to my race, and without violating my obligations to the organization I serve and am sworn to uphold and protect. So Airl had a high degree of integrity. Okay, I thought, will you answer questions from the gallery? No, she said, I will not answer questions. I will provide information to you that I think will be beneficial to the well-being of the immortal spirit beings who compromise humanity, and that will foster the survival of all the myriad life forms and the environments of Earth, as it is a part of my mission to ensure the preservation of Earth. Personally, it is my conviction that all the sentient beings are immortal spiritual beings. This includes human beings. I'm going to read that again. Personally, it is my conviction that all sentient Sentient beings are immortal spiritual beings. This includes human beings. Now, this is where the ISB comes in. For the sake of accuracy and simplicity, I will use a made-up word, ISB, because the primary nature of an immortal being is that they live in a timeless state of is. And the only reason for their existence is they decide to be. No matter how lowly their station in a society, every ISB deserves the respect and treatment that I myself would like to receive from others. Each person on earth continues to be an ISB whether they are aware of the fact or not. This is the awakening we're going through now. People are realizing that they're an ISB. I think it's wonderful. Matilda says, I will never forget this conversation. Her tone was very matter-of-fact and emotionless. However, for the first time, I sensed the presence of a warm and real personality in Airl. Her reference to immortal spirit beings struck me like a flash of light in a dark room. I had never before considered that a human being could be an immortal being. I thought that status of power was reserved solely for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And because I am a devout Catholic and the subject of the word of Lord Jesus and the Holy Father, I have never thought of a woman as an immortal spiritual being either, not even the Holy Mother Mary. My girl right there. Yet when Airl thought that thought, I became vividly aware for the very first time that she, personally, was an immortal spiritual being, and so are we all. Woo-hoo! Ariel said that she sensed that I was confused about the idea. She said that she would demonstrate to me that I am also an immortal spirit being. She said, be above your body. Immediately, I realized that I was outside of my body, looking down from the ceiling at the top of my body's head. I was also able to see the room around me, including Airl's body sitting in the chair next to my own body. After a moment, I realized the simple but shocking reality that I am not a body. In that moment, a black veil lifted, and for the first time in my life, and for a very long time into the past, I realized that I am not my soul, but that I am me, a spiritual being. This was an unexplained epiphany, but one that fills me with joy and relief I cannot recall having experienced ever before. As for the immortal part, I do not understand her meaning, as I have always been taught that I am not immortal. A spirit perhaps, but certainly not immortal. After a moment, I'm not sure how long, Ariel asked me if I had a better understanding of the idea. Suddenly, I was back inside my body again and said out loud, yes, I see what you mean. I was so taken aback by the experience that I had to get up from my chair and walk around the room for a few minutes. I made an excuse that I need to get a drink of water and go to the restroom, which I did. In the restroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. I used the toilet, freshed up, straightened my uniform. After 10 minutes, I felt more normal again and returned to the room. After that, I felt as though I was no longer just an interpreter for Airl. I felt as though I was a kindred spirit. I felt like I was safe at home with a trusted friend or a family member, as close as any I have ever had. Airl sensed and understood my confusion about the concept of personal immortality. She began her first lesson with me by explaining this to me. I just find this fascinating. I mean, even if it was written in 2007, there is still information in here. Whether this, I mean, I've heard things from folks who, channel and so forth, and it's like this information, how she puts it, and her personal experience is just wild to me. I shall continue. Thank you. Ariel told me her reasons for coming to Earth and for being in the area. She was sent test. Oh, wait. Oh, okay. She was sent by her superior officers to investigate the explosions of nuclear weapons which have been tested in New Mexico. Her superiors ordered her to gather information from the atmosphere that could be used to determine the extent of radiation and potential harm this might cause the environment. During her mission, the spacecraft was struck by lightning, which caused her to lose control and crash. The spacecraft is operated by ISBs, who use doll bodies, in much the same way that an actor wears a mask and a costume. It is a like mechanical tool through which to operate in the physical world. She, as well as all of the other ISBs of the officer class and their superiors, inhabit these doll bodies when they are on duty in space. When they are not on duty, they leave the body and operate, I think, communicate, travel, and exist without the use of a body. The bodies are constructed of synthetic materials, including a very sensitive electrical nervous system to which each ISB adjusts themselves or tune into that electronic wavelength that is matched uniquely to the wavelength or frequency emitted by uniquely to the wavelength or frequency emitted by each ISB. Each one of us has our own frequency. Here's some more proof kind of thing. Each ISB is capable of creating a unique wave frequency which identifies them, much like a radio frequency. This serves in part as identification, like a fingerprint. The doll body acts like a radio receiver for the ISB. No two frequencies or doll bodies are exactly the same. The bodies of each ISB crew member are likewise tuned into and connected to the nervous system built into the craft. The spacecraft is built much the same way as the doll body. It is adjusted specifically to the frequency of each ISB crew member. Therefore, the craft can be operated by thoughts or energy emitted by the ISB. It is really a very simple direct control system. So, there are no complicated controls or navigation equipment on board the spacecraft. They operate as an extension of the ISB. That explains why they can turn left, without killing them. And we think of terms of how these flesh bags of our human bodies, why we just can't go flying around the way they do, because the way they're flying around is in a different state of physical or non-physical condition as being described. So when the lightning bolt struck the spacecraft, this caused a short circuit and consequently disconnected them from the control of the ship momentarily, which resulted in the crash. Airl was and still is an officer, pilot, and engineer in an expeditionary force, which is part of a space opera civilization, which refers to itself as the Domain. This civilization controls a vast number of galaxies, stars, planets, moons, and asteroids throughout an area of space that is approximately one-fourth the entire physical universe. That's a big area. The continuing message of her organization is to secure, control, and expand the territory and resources of the domain. Now, in a way, this is a little freaky to me, but if by not having any nefarious purposes, at least from what Miss McElroy was saying, when they say control, ooh, we all kind of cringe at that. But to control something might just be to make sure that nothing bad happens, So, and the word domain, and this was, she transcribed this back in the 40s. And so, anyway, our idea of the domain, is like, oh, domination. But now she explained earlier on that domain was the best thing. It was her best interpretation. So we have to take that into consideration when we hear her use the word domain. That's my personal input to this, because I had to go through this. I don't know about y'all having this domain thing over me, but to that point, I understand it. You control just to keep the blue meanies out. Airl pointed out that her own activities were very similar in many ways to the European explorers who discovered and claimed the New World for the Holy Father, the Pope, and for the kings of Spain, Portugal, and later. However, the native inhabitants were never consulted with or asked for their permission to become a part of the domain of European nations and the soldiers and priests they sent to acquire the territory and wealth in order to advance their interest. Airl said she read in the history book that the Spanish king regretted the brutal treatment of the native inhabitants by his soldiers. He feared retribution from the gods he worshipped, as he described in the various testaments of the Bible. He asked the Pope to prepare a statement called the Requirement, which was supposed to be read to each of the newly encountered native inhabitants. The king hoped that the statement, whether it was accepted or rejected by the natives, would absolve the king of all responsibility for the resulting slaughter and enslavement of those people. So the king went to the Pope, hey, give me a way out on this one, will you? Oh my gosh. He used this statement as justification to confiscate their land and possessions by his soldiers and the Pope's priest. Apparently, the Pope personally did not have any feelings of guilt or responsibility in the matter. Oh, no, hey, go ahead, kill a bunch of them. Make them all Christian, though. Airl thought that such actions were those of a coward, and that it is no surprise that the territory of Spain was diminished so quickly. Only a few years later, the king was dead, and his empire had been assimilated by other nations. Isn't that a coinkydink? Airl said that this sort of behavior does not occur in the domain. Their leaders assume full responsibility for the actions of the domain and would not denigrate themselves in this fashion. Boy, our politicians could learn a thing or two. Nor do they fear any gods or have any regret for their action. This idea reinforces my earlier suggestion that Airl and her people are probably atheists. Now, remember that Miss Matilda here is Catholic. Okay, just keep that in mind. In the case of the acquisition of Earth by the domain, the rulers of the domain have chosen not to openly reveal this intention to the native inhabitants of Earth until a later time when it may or may not suit their interest to reveal themselves. For the present time, this is 1947, for the present time, it is not strategically necessary to make the presence of the domain expeditionary force known to mankind. In fact, until now, it has been very aggressively hidden for the reasons that will be revealed later. She goes on, the asteroid belt near Earth is a very small but important location for the domain in this part of space. Actually, some of the objects in our solar system are very valuable for use as low-gravity space stations. They are interested primarily in the low-gravity satellites in this solar system, which consist mainly of the side of the moon facing away from the Earth and the asteroid belt, which was a planet that was destroyed billions of years ago, and that to a lesser degree, Mars and Venus. Doom structures synthesized from gypsum or underground bases covered by the electromagnetic force screens are easily constructed to house the domain forces. Once an area of space is acquired by the domain and becomes a part of the territory under its control, it is treated as the property of the domain. The space station near the planet Earth is important only because it lay along a path of the domain expansion route towards the center of the Milky Way galaxy and beyond. Of course, everyone in the domain is aware of this, except for the people of Earth. Welcome, Earthlings. So I continue to find this fascinating, and this is more of instruction and so forth. And so I want to just keep on going down here to what she's saying. Before you can understand the subject of history, you must first understand the subject of time. Time is simply an arbitrary measurement of the motion of objects through space. Space is not linear. Space is determined by the point of view of an ISB when viewing an object. The distance between an ISB and the object being viewed is called space. Objects or energy masses in space do not necessarily move in a linear fashion. In this universe, objects tend to move randomly or in a curving or cyclical pattern, okay, or as determined by agreed upon rules. I'm going to read that again for myself. In this universe, objects tend to move randomly. I guess that means like comets or things, or in a curving or cyclical. I almost thought it was cylindrical there for a second. Or as determined by agreed upon rules. Now, it's interesting that there's been some far out statements made by some folks that, the moon was brought into our solar system, and that different planets and other moons and other objects were drugged here from other parts of the universe and placed here on purpose. And, and as Miss Matilda has stated, she wasn't much of a person for astronomy and etc. And she was a nurse. But to that point, though, I have an understanding of because I still am an astronomer, and I understand these things. So it's like, holy cow! But this was in 1947, supposedly. I'm accepting this because it is some of this information just hits home. So, like, yeah, that's it. Objects or energy masses in space do not necessarily move in a linear fashion. In this universe, objects tend to move randomly. Oh, I already read that. Sorry. History is not on. Wait. Drink a coffee. Hang on just a sec. History is not only a linear record of events, as many authors of Earth history books imply, because it is not a string that can be stretched out and marked like a measuring tool. History is a subjective observation of the movement of objects through space, recorded from the point of view of a survivor rather than of those who succumbed. Events occur interactively and concurrently, just as the biological body has a heart that pumps blood, while the lungs provide oxygen to the cell, which reproduce using the energy from the sun and chemicals from plants, at the same time as the liver strains toxic waste from the blood and eliminates them through the bladder and the bowels. All of these interactions are concurrent and simultaneous. Although time runs consecutively, events do not happen in an independent linear stream. In order to view and understand the history or reality of the past, one must view all events as part of an interactive whole. Time can also be sensed as a vibration, which is uniform throughout the entire physical universe. I got to read that for myself again. Time can also be sensed as a vibration, which is uniform throughout the entire physical universe. I get that. I do. Whoa. Airl explained that ISBs have been around since before the beginning of the universe. The reason they are called immortal is because a spirit is not born and cannot die, but exists in a personally postulated perception of is, will be. She was careful to explain that every spirit is not the same. Each is completely unique in identity, power, awareness, and ability. The difference between an ISB, like Airl, and most of the ISBs inhabiting bodies on Earth is that Airl can enter and depart from her doll at will. She can perceive at selective depths through matter. Airl and other officers of the domain can communicate telepathically. Since an ISB is not a physical universal entity, it has no location in space or time. An ISB is literally immaterial, so they can span great distance of space instantly. They can experience sensations more intensely than a biological body without the use of physical sensory mechanism. An ISB can exclude pain from their perception. Airl can also remember her identity, so to speak, all the way back into the dim mist of time for trillions of years. Imagine having that kind of memory. She says that the existing collection of suns in this immediate vicinity of the universe have been burning for the last 200 trillion years. The age of the physical universe is nearly infinitely old, but probably at least 4 quadrillion years since its earliest beginnings. Time is a difficult factor to measure as it depends on the subjective memory of the ISBs, and there has been no uniform record of events throughout the physical universe since it began. As on Earth, there are many different time measurement systems defined by various cultures, which use cycles of motion and points of origin to establish age and duration. The physical universe itself is formed from the convergence and amalgamation of many other individual universes. The physical universe itself is formed from the convergence and amalgamation of many other individual universes. Now, this is a personal note. I've been discussing that timelines are converging, and that's the reason for Mandela and other things. But that's just my side note. Back to the text. Each one of which was created by an ISB or group of ISBs. The collision of these illusory, I guess that's illusion. Sorry, I usually don't get stuck on a word, but illusory is I've seen it before, but it just stuck me. Sorry about that, please. The collision of these illusory universes commingled and coalesced and were solidified to form a mutually created universe. Could this be where the different gods come in? I digress. Because it is agreed that energy and forms can be created, but not destroyed. This creative process has continued to form an ever-expanding universe of nearly infinite physical proportions. Before the formation of the physical universe, there was a vast period during which universes were not solid, but were wholly illusionary. You might say that the universe was a universe of magical illusions which were made to appear and vanish at the will of the magician. In every case, the magician was one or more ISBs. Many ISBs on Earth can still recall vague images from that period. Tales of magic, sorcery, and enchantment. Fairy tales and mythology speak of such things, although in very crude terms. Each ISB entered into the physical universe when they lost their own home universe. That is, when an ISB's home universe was overwhelmed by the physical universe, or when the ISB joined with other ISBs to create or conquer the physical universe. On Earth, the ability to determine when an ISB entered the physical universe is difficult for two reasons. Number one, the memory of ISBs on Earth have been erased. Number two, ISB's arrival or invasion into the physical universe took place at different times, some 60 trillion years ago, and others only 3 trillion. Every once in a short while, a few million years, an area or planet will be taken over by another group of ISBs entering into the area. Sometimes they will capture other ISBs as slaves. They will be forced to inhabit bodies to perform menial or manual work, especially mining mineral ores on heavy gravity planets, such as Earth. Now, this right here could explain what reincarnation is. And that's where many of us have gotten the term, we're on a prison planet. There is, you go up, but you don't really go out, and you have to come back to the Earth. And that's why Earth is considered hell. That's my side note there. Back to the text. Ariel says that she has been a member of the Domain Expeditionary Force for more than 625 million years, when she became a pilot for a biological survey mission, which included occasional visits to Earth. She can remember her entire career there and for a very long time before that. She told me that Earth scientists do not have an accurate measuring system to gauge the age of matter. They assume that because certain types of materials seem to deteriorate rather quickly, such as organic or carbon-based matter, that there is a deterioration of matter. It is not accurate to measure the age of stone based on the measurement of the age of wood or bone. This is a fundamental error. Factually, matter does not deteriorate. It cannot be destroyed. Matter may be altered in form, but it is never truly destroyed. I've been saying that, but as an understanding in myself. Back to the text. The domain has conducted a periodic survey of the galaxies in this sector of the universe since it developed space travel technologies about 80 trillion years ago. A review of changes in the complexion of Earth reveal that mountain ranges rise and fall, continents change location, the poles of the planet shift, ice caps come and go, oceans appear and disappear, the river, valleys, and canyons change. In all cases, the matter is the same. It is always the same sand. Every form and substance is made of the same basic material, which never deteriorates. Holy mackerel. See, some of the things that I have just come to realize in my 55 years of studying science as a hobby, blah, 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 is that holy mackerel. I understand some of these things, and some of my own understanding long before I ever came across this. This just confirms my own personal accumulation of knowledge and reading and experience, etc. Now, I'm going to read Matilda's note here. She says, I can't even begin to imagine how advanced a civilization may have become, technically, mentally, after trillions of years. Just think of how advanced our own country has become compared to only 150 years. Only a few generations ago, transportation was on foot, horseback, or boat. Reading was done by candlelight. Eating and cooking were done over a fireplace, and there wasn't any indoor plumbing. And that's true. I mean, and look at when I was born, there were no computers, at least not that you could buy and carry around with you. And just in the last 20 years, everybody's got a cell phone. So look how much we've progressed, or at least in technology, maybe. Okay, going back to the interview. Airl described the abilities of an ISB officer of the domain to me, and she demonstrated one to me when she contacted telepathically a communications officer of the domain who is stationed in the asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is composed of thousands of broken up pieces of a planet that once existed between Mars and Jupiter. It serves as a good low gravity jumping off point for incoming spacecraft traveling towards the center of our galaxy. She requested that this officer consult information stored in the files of the domain concerning the history of Earth. She asked the communications officer to feed this information to Airl. The communications officer immediately complied with the request. Based on the information stored in the files of the domain, Airl was able to give me a brief overview or history lesson. This is what Airl told me that the domain had observed about the history of Earth. Okay, time to take a sip. She told me that the Domain Expeditionary first entered into the Milky Way galaxy very recently, only about 10,000 years ago. Their first action was to conquer the home planet of the old empire, the Blue Meanies. This is not the official name, but a nickname given to the conquered civilization by the Domain forces. That served as the seat of central government for this galaxy and other adjoining regions of space. These planets are located in the star systems in the tail of the Big Dipper constellation. She did not mention which stars exactly. About 1500 years ago, about 1500 years later, the Domain began installation bases for their own forces along the path of invasion, which leads toward the center of this galaxy and beyond. About 8,200 years ago, the Domain forces set up a base on Earth in the Himalayan mountains near the border of modern Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, you folks wonder why there's so much war going on over there. It's because of this technology and stuff, which has been there for thousands of years. Okay, continue. This was a base for a battalion of the Domain Expeditionary Force, which included about 3,000 members. They set up a base under or inside the top of a mountain. The mountaintop was drilled into and made hollow to create an area large enough to house the ships and personnel of that force. An electronic illusion of the mountaintop was then created to hide the base by projecting a false image from inside the mountain against a force screen. Hologram. The ships could then enter and exit through the force screen, yet remain unseen by Homo sapiens. Shortly after they settled there, the base was surprised by an attack from a remnant of the military forces of the old empire. Unbeknownst to the Domain, a hidden underground base on Mars, operated by the old empire, had existed for a very long time. The Domain base was wiped out by a military attack from the Mars base, and the ISBs of the Domain Expeditionary Force were all captured. You can imagine that the Domain was very upset about losing such a large force of officers and crew. So they sent other crews to Earth to look for them. Those crews were also attacked. The captured ISB from the Domain forces were handled in the same fashion as all other ISBs who have been sent to Earth. They were each given amnesia, had their memories replaced with false pictures and hypnotic commands, and sent to Earth to inhabit biological bodies. They are still a part of the human population today. After a very persistent and extensive investigation into the loss of their crews, the Domain discovered that old empire has been operating a very extensive and very carefully hidden base of operations in this part of the galaxy for millions of years. No one knows exactly how long. Eventually, the spacecraft of the old empire forces and the Domain engaged each other in open combat in the space of the solar system. According to Airl, there was a running battle between the old empire forces and the Domain until about 1235 AD, when the Domain forces finally destroyed the last of the spacecraft of the old empire force in this area. The Domain Expeditionary Force lost many of its own ships in this area during that time also. About 1,000 years later, the old empire base was discovered by accident in the spring of 1914. The discovery was made when the body of the Archduke of Austria was taken over by an officer of the Domain Expeditionary Force. This officer, who was stationed in the asteroid belt, was sent to Earth on a routine mission to gather reconnaissance. The purpose of this takeover was to use the body as a disguise through which to infiltrate human society in order to gather information about current events on Earth. The officer, as an ISB, having greater power than the being inhabiting the body of the Archduke, simply pushed the being out and took over control of the body. However, this officer did not realize how much the Habsburgs were hated by feuding factions in the country, so he was caught off guard when the body of the Archduke was assassinated by a Bosnian student. The officer, or Isby, was suddenly knocked out of the body when it was shot by the assassin. Disoriented, the Isby inadvertently penetrated one of the amnesia force screens and was captured. Eventually, the Domain discovered that a wide area of space is monitored by an electronic force field, which controls all of the Isbys in this end of the galaxy, including Earth. Now, could that be those, what were they called? Some kind of bomb, something? Anyway, the electronic force field is designed to detect Isbys and prevent them from leaving the area. Prison planet, anyone? If any Isby attempts to penetrate the force screen, it captures them in a kind of an electronic net. The result is that the captured Isby is subjected to a very severe brainwashing treatment, which erases the memory of the Isby. This process uses a tremendous electrical shock, just like Earth psychiatrists use electric shock therapy to erase the memory and personality of a patient and to make them more cooperative. Oh, I've been there. On Earth, this therapy uses only a few hundred volts of electricity. However, the electrical voltage used by the old Empire operation against Isby is on the order of a magnitude of billions of volts. This tremendous shock completely wipes out all the memory of the Isby. The memory erasure is not just for one life or one body. It wipes out all of the accumulated experience of a nearly infinite past, as well as the identity of the Isby. Wow. The shock is intended to make it impossible for the Isby to remember who they are, where they came from, their knowledge or skills, their memory of the past, and ability to function as a spiritual entity. They are overwhelmed into becoming a mindless, robotic non-entity. Can you say sheeple? After the shock of a series of post-hypnotic suggestions are used to install false memories and a false timeline orientation in each Isby, that's why there's so much confusion. This includes the command to return to the base after the body dies, so that the same kind of shock and hypnosis can be done again and again and again forever. The hypnotic command also tells the patient to forget to remember. I'm sorry, I've been there before. What the Domain learned from the experience of this officer is that the old empire has been using Earth as a prison planet for a very long time. Exactly how long is unknown, perhaps millions of years. So, when the body of the Isby dies, they depart from the body. They are detected by the force screen. They are captured and ordered by hypnotic command to return to the light. The idea of heaven and the afterlife are part of the hypnotic suggestion, a part of the treachery that makes the whole mechanism work. OMG. After the Isby has been shocked and hypnotized to erase the memory of the life just lived, the Isby is immediately commanded hypnotically to report back to Earth as though they were on a secret mission to inhabit a new body. Each Isby is told that they have a special purpose for being on Earth. But of course, there is no purpose for being in a prison, at least not for the prisoner. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I have to take another sip, please. Wow. I don't know if I ever got this far down. Yes, I have. Anyway, it's just like hitting me all over again. Because those of us who are being awakened, tuplet bombs, I think was the name I was looking for earlier. It's been suggested that the Earth, we know there are ley lines on the Earth, and that there have been detected like a ley line type thing above the Earth and around the Earth. And so that, so many people, why do we keep coming back here? Blah, blah, blah. Well, here you go. Why do we feel like we've had many lives? We have. And we're commanded not to remember any of these things, But at the same time, one thing I want to put into this is that, so I was making a point earlier, I think maybe in another video, that people who channel things and say they have been, reading or viewing the Akashic record, I say this, are those all false memories put into a certain group of people? And when they come back down here, when they are trying to reach their higher selves, are they reaching the higher self with this hypnotic suggestion of what the Akashic record, et cetera, et cetera? Does that make sense? Okay. Any undesirable is, oh, this is important. Okay, another sip so I can continue. I can see right now that I'm going to have to revisit some of this and break it up or something, because this is just way too much. But I think much like Winston Trout said, this information is very pertinent, and important. And as I reread this and then go back through some of the things that I've known for the last 25 or 30 years, and this didn't come out until 2007 or 8, and she apparently wrote it in the 1947. Oh my God. So this information is actually in many ways proving David Wilcox, and to some degrees Corey Good and some other folks about some things, and that some of their memories are correct, but at the same time I think it was confused by what Airl described as false memories, a hologram. Okay. I continue. This is really important. Any undesirable Isbys who are sentenced to Earth were classified as untouchable by the old empire. This included anyone that the old empire judged to be criminals who are too vicious to be reformed or subdued, as well as other criminals such as sexual perverts or beings unwilling to do any productive work. An untouchable classification of Isbys also includes a wide variety of political prisoners. Why doesn't that surprise me? This includes Isbys who are considered to be non-compliant, free thinkers, or revolutionaries who make trouble for the governments of the various planets of the old empire, not of the domain. Of course, anyone with a previous military record against the old empire is also shipped off to Earth. A list of untouchables include artists, painters, singers, musicians, writers, actors, and performers of every kind. For this reason, Earth has more artists per capita than any other planet in the old empire. Woo! That explains a lot too, in my humble opinion. Untouchables are also include intellectuals, inventors, and geniuses in almost every field. Since everything the old empire considers valuable has long since been invented or created over the last few trillion years, they have no further use for such beings. This includes skilled managers also, which are not needed in a society of obedient, robotic citizens. Can you say New World Order? These are remnants of the old empire. Now, this came out before the New World Order was a big deal, okay? Even in 2007-8. Anyone who is not willing or able to submit to mindless economic, political, and religious servitude as a tax-paying worker in the class system of the old empire are untouchable and sentenced to receive memory wipeout and permanent imprisonment on Earth. Yuck. The net result is that an ISB is unable to escape because they can't remember who they are, where they came from, where they are. They have been hypnotized to think they are someone, something, sometime, and somewhere other than where they really are. The Domain officer who was assassinated while in the body of Archduke of Austria was, likewise, captured by the old empire force. Because this particular officer was a high-powered ISB compared to most, he was taken away to a secret old empire base under the surface of Mars. They put him into a special electronic prison cell and held him there. Fortunately, this Domain officer was able to escape from the underground base after 25 years in captivity. When he escaped from the old empire base, he returned immediately to his own base in the asteroid belt. His commanding officer ordered that a battle cruiser be dispatched to the coordinates of the base provided by this officer and to destroy that base completely. This old empire base was located a few miles north of the equator on Mars in the Cydonia area. Although the military base of the old empire was destroyed, unfortunately, much of the vast machinery of the ISB force screens, the electroshock, amnesia, hypnosis machinery continues to function in other undisclosed locations right up to the present moment. The main base or control center for this mind control prison operation has never been found. So the influences of this base or bases are still in effect. The Domain has observed that since the old empire space forces were destroyed, there is no one left to actively prevent other planetary systems from bringing their own untouchable ISBs to Earth from all over the galaxy and from other galaxies nearby. Therefore, Earth has become a universal dumping ground for this entire region of space. This, in part, explains the very unusual mix of races, colors, languages, moral codes, religious, political influence among the ISB population on Earth. The number and variety of heterogeneous societies on Earth are extremely unusual on a normal planet. Most Sun-type 12 Class 7 planets are inhabited by only one humanoid body or race, if any. In addition, most of the ancient civilizations of Earth and many of the events of Earth have been heavily influenced by the hidden hypnotic operation of the old empire base. So far, no one has figured out exactly where and how this operation is run. or by whom, because it is so heavily protected by screens and traps. Furthermore, there has been no operation undertaken to seek out, discover, and destroy the vast ancient network of electronics machinery that create the ISB 4 screens at this end of the galaxy. Until this has been done, we are not able to prevent or interrupt the electric shock operation, hypnosis, and remote thought control of the old Empire prison planet. Of course, all of the crew members of the Domain Expeditionary Force now remain aware of this phenomena at all times while operating in this solar system of space, as to prevent detection and the capture by these old Empire traps. All right. I got to take another. Oh, it's been 2 hours now. All right. I might have to break this up into a third hour because I got to have a break. But I'm hoping that at least this much has been stimulated thought. Because in my opinion, what the ISB explained is exactly what has come out in some of the Cobra interviews, other people who have been interviewed over the last few years. And it's like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I mean, you know, I know that I'm an engineer and I have been an engineer. There are things that I know I never went to school for, but I just have these things, you know, it's my innate ability or whatever, you know. But the thing is that as an engineer and my being able to see things, machines and all that kind of stuff, the things that I am aware of and know aren't taught in schools. I don't know where I got this information from. I just know it. Now, that's my personal thing on this, right? I mean, I don't know. But the idea of reincarnation and the idea of the soul trap has been explained on so many levels by so many people, but I have never heard anyone but Winston Strout discuss this document, this story. Now, maybe other people have read this story and they're trying to explain it, but I give credit to Miss Matilda. If I have something I want to discuss about this, I'm going to reference this text, this document, in my opinion, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, and that's to Miss Matilda, you know, for her, you know, finally understanding her responsibility. And in one of her statements that I skipped over, she said that even up to her death, she had stayed in contact with Airl. And so, which I just find, you know, absolutely fascinating in itself. But after 2 hours of being on here, and after I want to be able to smoke a cigarette, and I need more coffee, and I got to go to the bathroom, you know, too much information. I realize that. But to that point, though, I really do think this is important because it explains things in a way like, well, why, how come this and how come that? And oh my God. And it also explains like people who, don't get me wrong with this, please. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying that a lot of people are putting a lot of faith in what might very well be fake information. And they're trying to present it because they feel it's being channeled to them. And maybe, but my point is that Airl clearly says, you know, until this this electronic measuring thingy device is gone. And my understanding is that there are still parts of it in operation right now. But having seen, spacecraft blowing each other out there, I know there is a war, a physical war going on to free this planet from the old empire. And some of the hidden bases of the old empire, which I'm just going to go with Draco's not right. The reptilians. Some of the reptilians have been here a long time. And it would seem to be pretty easy for a reptilian race of warriors to this would just be their thing, And there is information that says that they may not be too bright, but they've got a hold of some really, hair-raising kind of machinery or devices or such. And that this would be right in their realm of, hey, prison planet. Now, also, before I let you go here, to sum up a little bit of something, I want to explain, too, that this also explains where do some of these perverted people come from on this planet? I mean, I'm sorry, but, eating another individual and, some of the gruesome stuff that happens. We look at a person and go, how could you do that? How could a human being do that to another human being? Well, guess what? They might not be another human being. They might be this degenerate that no one could control and toss down here on this prison planet. So what did the interview say? Artists, all these folks were here. Well, the earth does have a lot of artists and musicians. Damn near everybody I know is artistic in some way or musically inclined or something, and those who aren't are like managers and exactly what Airl described as those people who were dumped on this planet. Now, as far as some of this other stuff, the perversion, I'm just, for an example, Jack the Ripper or something like that, oh, shoot. What was his name, that kept people cut up in his refrigerator? Jeffrey Dahmer, for example. What his spirit might not have, his Isby was so contaminated that they didn't want him on, that Isby wasn't allowed on any other planet, realm, or whatever. And they said, okay, dude, you're going to hell. Welcome to Earth. Now, we hear of many species who say, oh, the Earth is beautiful and all these other things, which it is. There's a lot of water here, which it does. A lot of other things, which it is, blah, blah, blah. But those are all good, positive things. But think about this, though. So if somebody wanted to entice and capture Isbies, wouldn't you make it really nice down here? Like, ooh, look, water. Oh, let's go to the beach. I'm going to the Bahamas or whatever, but the fact that I've known for a long time about something in the Himalayas. And then I read this report about, about Airl, about their expeditionary forces and all this stuff. It explains the Vimana. It explains the Vedic text. It explains so much. And whether or not Miss McElroy had done any of that type of research, if she did, holy mackerel, just her research is amazing, because many of these points are proving themselves out now. Many of the folks that I listen to in the underground have talked about the prison planet and the electro thing and the da-da-da. And really? So we're hitting on all cylinders here. Now, again, I'm bringing this up about people's memories because this, I believe, is important. We need to take I'm being told by my higher self that folks need to take a step back from some of this Akashic record stuff, because they're believing too much in it and it has become a cult. All right? Not intentionally, but it has become a cult. And that, I want to join. But, and the information hits you with a resonance that somehow means something, but at the same time is tied to a fake history and an array. I've been electrocuted with 220 volts and snacked and backed and I can't imagine being hit by any more than that. So if we're, if our spirits are getting, zonked with 1 billion volts and hypnotic suggestions, it's no wonder that we're so fragmented when we get here. Now, to the other side of this, what if the star seeds coming down weren't zapped? They're new ISBs with some memory, not all of it. I mean, some of these star children, I mean, even my grandson has made statements at 5 years old. Mama, why do people hurt each other like that? He's such a kind soul. And I knew beforehand that my grandson was going to be this way. Anyway, but to the point, I have a personal contact with a young being here on this planet who is already at such a young age so tuned in to these other vibrations, along with a lot of these other star seed children, indigo, whatever you want to call them. Let's just call them ISBs that are here to help save this planet and to rescue the rest of us from this interminable going back and forth and back and forth. Now, another thing that was said was that one of the reasons that we are being hit with galactic waves is to help knock out, sort of like an EMP wave, electromagnetic pulse, like a weapon, to knock out the grid kind of deal. So that these galactic energies are actually similar in a comparison to our reality, like an EMP burst to help knock out the rest of whatever's here. And at the same time, give us a jolt of energy so that we will start remembering who we were. And that's happening. So in my opinion, as I read through this book, document, whatever, from Miss McElroy, I think to myself, she's spot on with some of this stuff, in my opinion. And the fact that, I have been complaining for years that these scientists are trying to carbon date this stuff. And I always figured it was dumb and stupid. And Ariel says it's not accurate, And I have recently been discussing about time. In fact, I did a video earlier today about I feel like I'm in my own little time bubble here. And so, time is a reference point. From my point of view, it's this time, and other things are changing around me. And so Ariel even points that out as like time is sort of random and things of this and that. And you can't really stretch it out and measure it and put things. Now, I've read this 9 months ago, and I'm sure it's in my subconscious, but I understood some of this before I read this document. So all this document did was confirm, in my opinion, the feelings and what I've already learned up to this point in my life in this configuration of ISB. And so I think and I know many of us in this community and waking up and trying to understand, I think the idea of us all being ISBs, rather than an angel or a this or a that. But if you can, ISBs are all of that. And if we look at each other as an ISB, I is and an IB, it's a made up word. Ariel made it up, but I like it because it's unlike anything else, And if you read this and understand what she's speaking about, I feel like an ISB. I feel my energy. I can feel this thing, and I'm like, holy cow, And I now feel somehow connected to the other ISBs. And when I say my prayers and things, I include the ISBs now. And because I think it's like, well, wait a minute, as these veils are being peeled apart for all of us, why not get in touch with other ISBs, And maybe we are downloading some of this information. However, again, I'm told to give out this warning. Be careful of people who are going into this Akashic record thing, because some of those memories are planted. We got to wait until we get through this thing. And we have been assured, I have been assured, that the real truth's going to come out. And some of this is in the form of what Ariel told Miss Matilda. It's there. Now I got to take a break. I'm going to come back. I don't know. It's it's almost 1:30 days time. But I would really like to do the rest of this while I got it, but I got to have a break. So for those of you who may be watching, it says 4. I don't see any comment. Thank you. I love you. And to anyone who may have come in after this live feed and watched this, I pray in a very good way that this touches you and your spirit with some kind of resonance that makes sense. You know, we can get rid of the angels and the spirits and all this kind of stuff if we're just Isbies, you know. But that says it all. It's encompassing. We are angels and gods and this, but we're Isbies. Oh, I like that. I really do. So, with love, gratitude, thank you all. Blessings to everyone. And may you remember your true Isbie. I got to get out of here and go take a break.